In an era of perpetual breaking news,
I don't get bored. There's nothing boring about this.
two developments in the last week have been particularly huge.
But, and it'll be spectacular. It'll be the most beautiful ballroom. I believe it's because I built many a ballroom.
Last Friday, the public got word that Anthropic was refusing to go along with government requests to be allowed to use its LLM Claude in ways that violated its own safety guardrails.
All of this matters because now the template for every AI military deal and what comes after it. This is sort of set the precedent.
Late that night, Sam Altman spoke up for OpenAI to say they had cut a deal with the government.
Across town, OpenAI employees, they are heading into work this morning as well. They are being greeted by fresh messages on their sidewalks as well against the deal that Sam Altman signed over the weekend.
Why did Anthropic balk?
What's interesting, too, is a lot of the messages on the sidewalk there are directed towards OpenAI employees, asking them to use their voices and call out what's happening. And remember that nearly 100 of them signed a letter before the weekend backing Anthropic's position over their own company's deal.
They were concerned over measures related to the conduct of war and the possibility that the government would be able to conduct domestic surveillance inside the United States.
Dario Amodei is at the center of a new kind of firestorm.
It's about the principle of standing up for what's right.
What's wrong, in his view, is why his AI company, Anthropic, has been banned from the federal government.
Altman was met with fury.
Anthropic's Claude app hit #1 spot on the App Store, dethroning ChatGPT for the first time ever.
As his company's concessions to government demands were followed by military strikes on Iran.
OpenAI CEO Sam Altman says he thinks his company shouldn't have rushed its recent deal with the Defense Department. In a post on X, Altman said, I think it just looked opportunistic and sloppy.
The other new crisis was, of course, the military strikes on Iran.
I picked those drapes in my first term. I always like gold.
The assassination of Iran's top leaders, including the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The U.S. government seems not to have thought through what the operation it is named Epic Fury will lead to.
Why wasn't there an evacuation plan, and will you send planes to get people out?
Well, because it happened all very quickly.
Or the real risk that it will create a much worse situation for not only the Iranians and the global economy.
Global gas prices have soared this week amid fears of a lengthy disruption to the world's most critical choke point for oil shipments, which have effectively stalled as the threat of attacks from Iran has deterred vessels from passing through the Strait of Hormuz.
That it doesn't actually seem to care about.
This was never meant to be a fair fight, and it is not a fair fight. We are punching them while they're down, which is exactly how it should be.
But also the administration itself.
I believe it's going to be the most beautiful ballroom anywhere in the world. And when you hear all that hammering out there, you know why the First Lady is not thrilled.
So today I want to talk about the U.S. bombing and assassination in Iran.
She said, will the pile drivers ever stop?
I want to talk about this question of domestic surveillance of American citizens.
You know, they go from 6 in the morning till 11:30 in the evening. Can you imagine? Here.
I'll look at how these issues reveal Trump's boneheaded yet dangerous authoritarian ambitions and why they might not work the way he hopes they will.
You know what? To me, that's a beautiful sound. She doesn't like it. I love it.
As always, at the end, I'll talk a little about what you can be doing right now to push back on all of this. Late last week, a statement from the tech company Anthropic made clear there were 2 limitations on their use of tools.
We have these 2 red lines. We've had them from day one. We are still advocating for those red lines. We're not going to move on those red lines.
Limitations they claimed were part of their agreements with the U.S. government and cases in which it was either not yet safe or not lawful to use their tools.
I think we are a good judge of what our models can do reliably and what they cannot do reliably. One
was mass domestic surveillance, and the other was fully autonomous weapons.
It doesn't show the judgment that a human soldier would show. Friendly fire or shooting a civilian or just the wrong kind of things.
The company's statement announced that the Department of War has stated they will only contract with AI companies who accede to any lawful use and remove safeguards in the cases mentioned above. They have threatened to remove us from their systems if we maintain these safeguards.
The red lines we have drawn, we drew because we believe that crossing those red lines is contrary to American values. Disagreeing with the government is the most American thing in the world.
After some back and forth, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth declared that Anthropic was a supply chain risk,
a first for an American company.
And President Donald Trump ordered every federal agency to stop using Anthropic's products.
It'll be spectacular. Be the most beautiful ballroom.
He later threatened the company with, quote, major civil and criminal consequences if they didn't remain supportive during the period in which the government would transition to new providers.
It feels very punitive and inappropriate given the amount that we've done for U.S. national security.
After initially supporting Anthropic's position, Sam Altman of OpenAI reversed course and cut a deal with the U.S. government.
In his ex-post, Altman said OpenAI was working with the Pentagon to amend its agreement, including adding language saying the company's AI technology wouldn't be used for domestic spying on Americans.
Altman expressed confusion as to why Anthropic hadn't made the same deal, claiming OpenAI had adhered to similar principles.
It's unclear why the Defense Department appears to have agreed to red lines from OpenAI similar to those that Anthropic was seeking. And it has a lot to do with, I think, a culture clash.
But TechDirt's Mike Masnick suggested that OpenAI had, in fact, caved and had done so on domestic surveillance inside the United States.
CEO Sam Altman also came out and said on X that the Pentagon had affirmed that they won't be using OpenAI's models for Department of War intelligence agencies, so things like the NSA.
Masnick wrote, "You get the sense that someone at Anthropic knows how the intel community misleads by using definitions of words that are different than everyone else believes.
We have stood up for the values of this country.
And the people at OpenAI simply don't know or don't care about that."
As my colleague Erin Wu wrote about earlier this week, the language in the agreement between OpenAI and the Pentagon is a bit vague, and there is a lot of wiggle room in terms of the Pentagon being able to use OpenAI models for things that, employees might not be super thrilled about.
Hours later, the U.S. bombed Iran.
When I hear that sound, that beautiful sound behind me, it means money, so I like it.
According to the Pentagon, more than 100 aircraft were launched.
The first 24 hours of this campaign were described nearly as twice the scale of the 2003 shock and awe campaign,
attacking more than 1,000 targets.
The U.S.-Israeli attack was to prevent peace, not to advance it. That's the headline of a new article in Counterpunch by the economist Michael Hudson, who details how President Trump opted to attack Iran despite progress made during last week's U.S.-Iran negotiations in Geneva.
The attacks wiped out key Iranian leaders, including Defense Minister Amir Nasirzadeh and Revolutionary Guards Commander Mohammad Pakpour, and most significantly in terms of governance, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei.
In the piece, Hudson writes about the significance of comments by Oman's foreign minister, who appeared on CBS's Face the Nation Friday, one day before the U.S. attack.
If the ultimate objective is to ensure forever that Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb, I think we have cracked that problem through these negotiations by agreeing a very important breakthrough that has never been achieved any time before.
Several hundred civilians also appear to have been killed, including more than 153 people, many of them children, after a strike hit a girls' school in southern Iran.
It seems that the Oman foreign minister flew to Washington so he could directly address this issue, saying more progress had been made and that the deal was going to be one better than Obama's. He didn't trust Jared Kushner to convey the level of progress that had been made.
Despite the condemnations of Anthropic from Hegseth and Trump in the lead-up to the unprovoked strike, it was later reported that the Department of Defense had actually used Claude, Anthropic's large language model, for the attacks.
Everything we have done has been for the sake of this country, for the sake of supporting U.S. national security. We believe in defeating our autocratic adversaries. We believe in defending America.
There appear to be few plans for next steps other than encouraging the Iranian people thousands of whom have just been slaughtered in recent weeks by their government, to rise up against it.
The fact that progress was being made and that Iran negotiators had agreed not to have an atom bomb, but to reduce their refined uranium, to shift the refined uranium outside of the country, and to submit to an unprecedented degree of oversight, made it urgent that the United States attack Iran immediately.
The administration has expressed a willingness to continue bombing Iran for the next several weeks.
President Trump says the conflict could go on forever,
though munitions are reportedly very low, which might make that complicated.
Declaring the U.S. has unlimited firepower to fight Iran.
All this is tied together.
But my wife isn't thrilled. She said, this is getting crazy.
The attacks on Iran and the weakening of safeguards on using AI for domestic surveillance.
I said, don't worry about it. We'll be all finished up in a few months.
And so it's no surprise that it took no time at all for Republicans to try to use Trump's war provocations to their own ends.
Neville Chamberlain can say, we'll have peace in our time if we just ignore it, and one day it'll get better. It's not getting better.
Senator James Lankford from Oklahoma appeared Sunday on ABC News using the administration's attack to try to force progress on funding the Department of Homeland Security's budget, which Democrats have been blocking due to abuses by ICE. He said,
let's get DHS funded again, by the way. We need to make sure we're defending the homeland by also funding what's happening here at home.
Republican Congressman from Nebraska, Don Bacon, put out a statement saying about DHS funding that if Hakeem Jeffries votes no, then it's on him.
Democratic lawmakers in the nation's capital still blocking legislation to fund the Department of Homeland Security until Republicans agree to new rules for immigration officers.
The argument is, apparently, that the government may have to defend Americans against attacks from outside the country.
DHS Secretary Kristi Noem slams the blockade.
The latest Democrat-led shutdown of DHS is reckless, it's unnecessary, and it undermines the American national security.
And that Trump's overseas provocations mean it's riskier to leave DHS unfunded at this moment.
I think it's imperative that we fund DHS now. I think the likelihood of a terrorist attack against the United States is very, very high.
But what they're saying in reality is that Democrats should let the government's own current attacks on its own people by ICE.
Her brother said that Renee Good was someone who could make you believe things were going to be okay despite all the hardship because she chose optimism.
As well as the attacks on Iran continue due to the potential outside attacks on Americans that might materialize in response to our aggression.
Alex Preddy was a Boy Scout, a choir member, an outdoorsman from Green Bay who lavished attention on his beloved dog, Jewel. His sister called her brother someone who had a way of lighting up every room that he walked into.
The government wants us to let ICE abuse U.S. residents, detain non-citizens and citizens alike without censure or punishment, shoot American citizens without investigation, and let the camp system expand indefinitely.
For months now, ICE has been quietly buying industrial warehouses around the country, reportedly with plans to turn them into a network of immigration detention and processing centers to hold tens of thousands of detainees.
All ostensibly in order to keep Americans safe.
If you kill Americans, if you threaten Americans anywhere on earth, we will hunt you down without apology and without hesitation, and we will kill you.
That argument is made no stronger by deliberately adding the death of civilians overseas and the threat of foreign terror groups on top of the current violence by ICE.
But only a few hours after they were gunned down by your agents, you called Renee a domestic terrorist. You said Alex committed an act of domestic terrorism. Alex's parents responded to your calling their son a domestic terrorist. They said the sickening lies told about our son by the administration are reprehensible and disgusting.
The medium is the message, and it's not subtle.
This is more than 800,000 square feet, and if it opens, it could be one of the largest detention facilities of its kind in the country.
They are currently harming countless people on the streets, from assault to murder, and in dozens of cases, killing detainees in detention.
We ran into Doris Kyle Shami and her husband Greg as we left the site.
The administration is ruining this country and is tearing apart communities.
tearing apart communities that we need, and they're good people.
They are assassinating and kidnapping foreign tyrants along with murdering school children over the weekend.
You know, this has got to stop.
They want to seize the power of life and death over everyone, the truly evil and the truly innocent, and all the regular people in between who are just trying to live their lives. This drive for domestic surveillance, and as well as the bombs dropped on foreign countries, are tactics drawn straight from the Authoritarian's handbook.
And we're doing very well on the war front, to put it mildly, I would say.
They tend to work in different ways, however. Starting foreign wars and entanglements traditionally unifies the country.
Somebody said, on a scale of 10, where would you rate it? I said about a 15.
The theory is that faced with a greater outside threat, the people will rally to their problematic leader.
I think we have great support.
Citizens can be prevailed upon to put patriotism over politics. The leader becomes heroic in his defense of the nation.
Everybody that seems to want to be a leader, they end up dead.
Violence overseas is, in concept, if not in execution, a positive argument, a plea for unity and a vision of the nation's identity and future in a time of trouble, even when that trouble is engineered.
And it's an amazing thing that's taking place before your eyes.
Domestic surveillance, however, works in the opposite fashion.
These are robotic police officers already operating on streets in China using cameras and artificial intelligence to monitor and manage people in real time.
It is meant to intimidate rather than to persuade the opposition.
U.S. experts call this authoritarian AI, technology designed to watch, to predict, and in some cases to act automatically.
To strike fear into the hearts of the president's foes on a hypothetical level, even before surveillance is conducted.
And China says the U.S. is doing this too.
To consolidate power and suppress dissent, strongmen tend to want to be able to preemptively identify the opposition and discredit, detain, or even destroy it.
A Georgetown University report found ICE has built massive AI-driven surveillance systems capable of pulling data on most American adults in the name of national security.
But intelligence is required to do this, and much of that's not allowed under current law.
This report from ASPI says AI is turbocharging surveillance of China's 1.4 billion people. With as many as 600 million cameras, that's roughly 3 cameras for every 7 people.
Authoritarians have always sought to solidify or expand their power by surveilling the people.
Algorithms used to flag what authorities call abnormal activity, even forecasting protests before they happen.
And they also tend to seek these foreign entanglements.
When crazy people have nuclear weapons, bad things happen.
Think Mussolini in Ethiopia, the entire Nazi enterprise, or Argentina with the Falklands.
So we're in very good shape now.
But the U.S. has its own history with both approaches.
In 1953, the CIA helped orchestrate the removal of Iran's Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh after he nationalized the country's oil industry.
Particularly violence abroad, including assassinations and bombings, and governments entirely overthrown.
Mossadegh was removed. Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi consolidated power as a monarch, and Iranians hoped to become a working democracy, were dashed.
Our country similarly has a grim history when it comes to surveillance. The monitoring of civil rights groups and campus leftists, along with the surveillance of students who came out against genocide in Gaza, for instance.
Tactically, it worked. Strategically, the long story arc tells a very different story. Decades of the Shah's autocratic rule fueled opposition that culminated in the 1979 Iranian Revolution.
The high point of accountability for both kinds of authoritarian-style actions I'm discussing today took place when I was a child, with the Church Committee hearings in the 1970s.
We have a particular obligation to examine the NSA in light of its tremendous potential for abuse,
which hampered these authoritarian tactics at home and abroad.
It has the capacity to monitor the private conversations of American citizens without the use of a bug or attack.
Jimmy Carter carried some of the committee's concerns forward.
I remember speaking to the General Counsel of the NSA when we began getting information and indicating we needed to get more information. And he said to me, but the Constitution does not apply to the National Security Agency.
Since that time, Ronald Reagan dealt deliberate blows to the Church Committee advances and to Carter's executive orders in terms of illegal international entanglements. The war on terror did even more damage, as well as the drone attacks that became commonplace under Republicans and Democrats alike. Meanwhile, surveillance likewise became a perpetual tug of war, with the rights of Americans all too often threatened by government or corporate ability to profit, literally or metaphorically, off of information that can be quietly gathered.
I want to let you know that, and we will continue forward. But it's a great display of military strength.
Wannabe and established authoritarians have to keep a lot of plates spinning in order to stay in power.
We rebuilt our military during the first term.
And they're loath to ignore their best tools for doing so.
And we're using it a little bit more than I thought we would have to.
So, will bombing work for Trump? Will he be able to get away with expanding U.S. surveillance as well?
Poll numbers show a majority of Americans with a negative view of Iran and a negative view of President Trump's handling of this situation.
The president's biggest problem right now is that he is already effectively a lame duck.
As U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran continue, new CBS News polling shows most Americans here at home disapprove.
He is profoundly, chronically unpopular.
I mean, overall, his net approval rating has been between -10 and -20 points in the past few polls, if you take an average of them. But if you look among independents, he's been floating at about -30 points oftentimes. The numbers with independents have been absolutely awful, and I'm just not quite sure how an administration can be politically alive when you have numbers that are that poor.
In contrast, after the 9/11 terror attacks, George W. Bush's popularity was stunningly high, reaching 90% by the end of that month.
For more, we're joined here in New York by Nargis Bajogli. She's an associate professor of anthropology and Middle East studies at Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies.
The world, too, was behind the U.S. in grieving the dramatic loss of thousands of lives in a terror attack.
It's important to note that the Supreme Leader did not go into hiding this time like he did in June. He didn't go into bunkers. And so in many ways, and because he was killed in his compound, he wanted to be martyred this time around.
He was dying of cancer already.
He was 86 years old.
Though Europe and Canada have been hedging their disapproval, now it's clear that the U.S. did not gather support or in some cases even inform its allies about the attack on Iran.
And that has significant meaning within Shia culture. And this is why we're seeing protests happening in Pakistan, as well as in Bahrain, as well as India and across the Muslim world, because he was not just a leader of a country, but for many Shia Muslims, they also saw him as a spiritual leader.
Back in 2003, after instigating war on terror, torture, and black sites and escalating violations of human rights, George W. Bush unleashed an unnecessary and destructive war on Iraq, deeply misrepresenting the nuclear capability and threat represented by Saddam Hussein.
We're only in day 5 of the war now, and I think part of what we're seeing is that the Israelis and the Americans have underestimated Iran's capabilities to strike back hard against the region.
And even then, Bush managed to get reelected by the American people.
Iran is going to continue to fight this and to inflict as much damage, not just on Israel, but importantly on the American security architecture in the Gulf region.
But Trump is not Bush, and it isn't 2003.
This is the danger of this moment. This has already turned into a regional conflagration, and this could turn into a regional war of a scale that will make the past 25 years of forever wars in the Middle East seem like a walk in the park.
There was no 9/11 to lift Trump's popularity before he began his bombing campaigns.
Ask people, do you think the administration has clearly explained what the U.S. goals are? And get a big number who said no. They don't think that they've done that yet.
The attack on Venezuela was deeply unpopular. The assault on Iran has somehow been even less celebrated.
61% of independents disapprove of the president's handling so far with Iran.
A Sunday poll from Reuters Ipsos showed that roughly 1 in 4 Americans surveyed approved of the president's actions.
The NBC poll matching other polls like a CBS News poll published yesterday saying 56% of Americans disapprove of the military action, while 44% approve of it.
Even with some of the slippage later, these are not good numbers for Trump.
Right now you see a very, very deep hole, but in about a year and a half from now, you're going to see a very, very beautiful building.
When it comes to domestic surveillance, how terrible that OpenAI was willing to do what Anthropic would not. there are certainly ways in which the use of AI for surveilling the resistance to Trump could do harm.
Now, our next guest says Americans are living in a surveillance state, and she is sounding the alarm about the dangers of techno-authoritarianism. British author and award-winning investigative journalist Carol Cadwalladr.
But a weak ruler is still a weak ruler.
I say it's a kind of power that the world has never seen before, is that these aren't just vast corporates making, some type of machines or cars or whatever. These are men who own global communication platforms, and those global communication platforms are now allied to the US government, which we can see quite clearly is acting in an authoritarian way.
And recent work out from political scientist Marcel Dirsus suggests that expanding surveillance possible through technological advances may have drawbacks for governments using those techniques. As Dirsus wrote, even the most technologically advanced dictatorships remain susceptible to internal fractures that no algorithm can anticipate or prevent. But technology can give an authoritarian the illusion of control.
So that's a lot said in a short period of time, but you can witness it for yourself.
Surveillance may even help secure a hold on power, but that power becomes brittle, closed off, and paranoid. Further, relying on surveillance to suppress dissent undermines trust and legitimacy.
Happy to welcome to the show, coming to us from Germany, Marcel Dirsus.
Something that has to be kept, even when a government is operating under competitive authoritarian models.
How do tyrants generally fall?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated question, but, so people by and large, they want freedom. They don't want tyranny.
What bombing abroad and the threat of greater surveillance at home make clear is that in the end, Trump and his allies are doing these things for the same reasons.
They want to have a say in the way that they're being governed. So, every tyrant constantly has to be afraid of his own people. And the people that he needs to be most afraid of are the people closest to him.
As Spencer Ackerman said just this week, the war on terror was always being waged simultaneously at home and overseas.
So the advisors, the generals, those intelligence officials that keep them in power.
We're seeing U.S. foreign policy and domestic policy fusing together.
I am from Tehran. There were constant bombings. There are 50 to 60 bombings daily. Very scary. It is unimaginable for the people with children.
I would add that the killings there and the killings we have recently seen here at home serve the same purpose. And it is not the safety or well-being of Americans. We can and should express our fury over Iran, over Venezuela, and over the threats the administration is spouting about Cuba.
Will you make a public commitment today to rule out U.S. regime change in Cuba?
Regime change?
Yes.
Oh, no, I think we would love to see the regime there change. We would like to, that doesn't mean that we're going to make a change, but we would love to see it change. There's no doubt about the fact that it would be of great benefit to the United States if Cuba was no longer governed by an autocratic regime.
There is, of course, the immediate horror of lives lost.
Can you give us an update on what the administration knows, what you know now about the reported strike on a girls' school in southern Iran on Saturday?
All I can say is that we're investigating that. We, of course, never target civilian targets, but we're taking a look and investigating that.
But damage is also being inflicted on the idea of solving political conflicts without resorting to war.
America, regardless of what so-called international institutions say, is unleashing the most lethal and precise air power campaign in history.
And on the very concept of international relations that are not simply oligarchs eliminating the existence of political institutions and accountability.
All on our terms, with maximum authorities. No stupid rules of engagement, no nation-building quagmire, no democracy-building exercise, no politically correct wars.
The standard responsive that I talk about on any number of weeks remain helpful.
B-2s, fighters, drones, missiles, and of course, classified effects.
You can demonstrate.
But in fact, you have your best chance of creating a democratization if you can topple tyrants through non-violent means. So mass protests, bringing our people into the streets.
You can let your representatives know how deeply you don't approve of these military strikes.
I think when it comes to the U.S. in particular, because there are still meaningful elections.
You can work to elect people who are committed to ending this kind of warmongering.
The most important thing right now is to mobilize as many people as possible against the government and to try to punish anyone politically and economically that continues to enable Donald Trump.
When it comes to surveillance, you can support the legal work of organizations like the ACLU that challenge government surveillance of American citizens. And to address the broader, tangible, growing threat from our increasingly authoritarian government, you can join a 5051 call. I'll be on Thursday, March 5th, to speak in concrete ways about how to push back against ICE kidnapping and the expansion of immigrant detention in ways large and small. With me will be Frank Abe, who has dedicated decades to memorializing the detainees of U.S. concentration camps for Japanese Americans established during World War II and following the legacy of the people that were detained there. On the call as well will be Sarah Parker, National Coordinator for 5051, who has done astounding work in Florida to secure reproductive rights and more recently to resist this administration. We may also hear from on-the-ground organizers who have successfully repelled attempts to secure warehouses for detention purposes in their communities. I hope you'll sign up to join us. And that's it.
Thanks for listening to Next Comes What. Please share this with one person who's looking for ways to survive this mess. To support this podcast, please become a paid subscriber at AndreaPitzer.com and consider giving Next Comes What a 5-star review where you get your podcasts.